New Orleans is no stranger to the impacts of climate change. It's one of the most vulnerable cities in the country. According to the National Academies, temperatures in New Orleans increased over 2 degrees from 1991 to 2020. Higher emissions could boost temps another 5.8 to 9 degrees by late this century.
You find yourself sitting outside, fanning inside the house, trying to find your cool spot.
You can't escape the heat.
You can't escape the heat.
Its low elevation and coastal erosion combined with hotter temps makes the city more prone to increased flooding, sea level rise, and more frequent and intense storms. According to Risk Factor, over 150,000 New Orleans properties have more than a 26% chance of being severely impacted by flooding over the next 30 years. That's 99% of the properties in the city.
This whole city is at risk of flooding.
And people who live there are looking for ways to mitigate the flooding and excessive heat. Catherine Prevost, community leader of the Bunny Friend Neighborhood Association in the Upper Ninth Ward, is taking matters into her own hands. Her answer, green infrastructure.
I just want my residents to be educated enough to talk about green infrastructure. I want to give them a chance because nobody's going to teach them this. Nobody's going to tell them this. Not inside of an African-American community.
The Bunny Friend community is home to some of the most underserved residents in New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina destroyed the community and residents were left to rebuild. They collaborated with partners to bring green infrastructure to their community.
Nature does a lot of good work for us. And as far as New Orleans being a city that's really threatened by climate change and by flooding, I really want to introduce how living with nature can help us combat climate change.
Green infrastructure is a way to manage water by using systems that protect, restore, and mimic the natural water cycle. Its tools can provide cleaner air, curb flooding, create a habitat for wildlife, and beautify a neighborhood. And for the Bunny Friend community, it's making a difference.
It seems to absorb more water, so I don't have to worry about the flooding in my block.
Madeline Batchman lives in the community. She began implementing green infrastructure on her own property after meeting Jeffrey Supak, the executive director of WaterWise.
With climate change already happening here, we're seeing more intense rainstorm events. So flooding has just become more of a nuisance to people. It's different, it's more common, it's more chronic, and people are fed up with it.
Green infrastructure helps mitigate flooding by reducing the water that goes into storm drains. Instead, water is absorbed in the ground or collected in rain barrels.
When you do bioswales, even with the trees that are planted, or you do permeable pavers, the water has a place to go. You're utilizing that water. Instead of that water going into the ground, it's going someplace where it can be utilized properly.
The Earth's rising temperatures could mean added trouble for New Orleans. Hotter air holds more moisture, and that could add up to heavier rain and increase flooding. The city could also see more frequent and more intense storms as ocean temperatures continue to rise. Dan Favre with the Greater New Orleans Foundation says people are key to mitigating these impacts, especially in communities of color.
There are historical systems of racial inequity that are really entrenched and that we see come up again when it comes to these environmental issues and impacts of climate change. And we do need a break. We need to be able to break those systems and these cycles. And I think that happens by ensuring that people are actually at part of the decision-making processes and that there are community-led climate solutions that help us get out of these really problematic situations.
And one solution, at least for Catherine Prevost's neighborhood, is trees.
We don't have any trees in some of the neighborhoods at all. And I think it was on design because it's an environmentally unjust community. It's African-American, predominantly African-American. And now that we learned about the heat island effect, we need trees. We really do need trees. Trees are very important to us. And a space like this makes it so much cooler, so we know the trees are working.
The cool spot in her neighborhood is the community garden. Prevost has poured a lot of love and green infrastructure into it.
All of my stuff that I have inside of here is native. I try not to put nothing that's not native to Louisiana. Residential engagement is very important to me because I can't do the things that I need to do without them. Like this lot here, the residents did this.
When you see something beautiful in your neighborhood, you want to protect it.
Yes, I do think that. I do think that. They're not gonna let you come trample on it.